Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Conquer the Gauntlet Pro, Evan Preparis, and I have another episode with two other Conquer the Gauntlet Pros. Joining me as my co-host today, I have Conquer the Gauntlet Pro Jay Flores from Exatlon, and taking the year off from OCR to do that TV show last year, but he's coming back this year as soon as OCR season actually picks up again. So Jay, welcome back.
Thanks, man. Excited to be back.
Yeah, and if you missed the episodes with Jay, you can go back and listen to. I think we've had him on the show twice before. Once talking about Telemundo show Exatlon, which you were on for. Again, remind our listeners of how many weeks and how many episodes there.
Yeah, so I was on for 3 months, and it was 6 days a week, live or not live, but 6 days a week on prime time. And then, but in total, I was there for like 4 months because there was some time later before the show and after the show.
So I'm gonna go ahead and make the statement that you are the most televised OCR athlete besides Mac Roche. And I think that's accurate because the amount, just from that one show, the amount of times that aired and how much like time it was on TV, I think that's that puts you and Mac at 1 and 2. And then Mac's been on, Broken Skull, and he's been on Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, thinking now, I'm not sure if you're aware, Isaiah Vidal is on this season.
Oh, is he really?
So he'll be up there. But yeah, so I had the Exatlon, and then I was on the Battle Frog show as well on ESPN. So, but Max probably got me more because of the, he's been on a couple other shows too. So between us three, though, we're probably the most televised OCR athletes for sure.
Cool. Jay also won Master of the Rig competition at OCR World Championships 2017, which was a platinum rig, essentially only race, and they held it at night and ended up being in the rain, which is pretty cool. So you can head back and listen to that episode we did about 2 years ago. Before we bring on our guests, quick word from our sponsor. So this episode is brought to you by Rapid Reboot. Rapid Reboot are the compression leggings. So those essentially pants you sit in, and then it hooks up to like a little machine there, and it inflates and deflates by zones, circulating your blood. Super awesome recovery tool. I think it's the best recovery tool you can buy, hands down, because it literally goes on in seconds, and then you can take a nap with it on if you want, or you can relax or watch TV or read to your kids. You can literally do whatever. And I used it every night of OCR America 2, help speed my recovery, so I was ready to go again the next day. I know Jay's been using it too. Jay, what are your thoughts on Rapid Reboot?
Definitely, I'd agree with you in terms of favorite recovery tool. And I've got a bunch of different types, from those like massage guns to traditional foam rolling, et cetera. I've tried a whole bunch of different things, and it's by far my favorite. Not only because it gives you that compression recovery, but also just like you mentioned, you can sit there. I've done work while I've done it. I've watched the Packer game while I've been recovering. And they're very generous with the team this year, and I was able to get the full kit. So not only the boots that you're talking about, but also the arm attachments and the hip attachments. So
nice. I haven't used those. How are those?
Yeah. So the hip attachment feels really good. I still haven't used the arm. I still need to get that one on. But overall, it's just really good to get different zones that sometimes we neglect to take care of. And I was actually talking to Ashton about this the other day, because we both had on and off kind of nagging injuries, and sometimes we do so much as OCR athletes that we forget how much we're actually doing to our bodies. You almost get used to it, and you need to really think back about recovery and taking the proper methods to make sure that your body gets back to where it needs to be. So this is one thing that's helped me, because I enjoy it and I can still do certain other things while I'm recovering.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's just so convenient and so fast and so easy. Absolutely love it. And I find that given a choice between like, oh, am I going to go for some stretching and post-race, like post-run recovery jog, or do I just get back to what I was doing or run another mile? And I will typically do not go to the, stretching post run or anything like that. So I like this because it gives me an easy way to actually do recovery. And if it's easy, it means I'll do it more often. So
Exactly. And it's like relaxing too. I don't know what it is about. It's almost like getting massage. You can just lay there and get the recovery. So I actually really look forward to it versus not always looking forward to stretching or foam rolling or other things. You still do some of those things, but this is definitely one of the most effective forms of recovery for me and the one that I look forward to the most.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the episode. So joining us, we have Ashton Abraham, one of the newer athletes from the Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team. We added him mid-season last year. So Ashton, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Ashton, give you a little bit of background on him, and then we'll jump into the questions. So he's from North Miami Beach, Florida, specializes in short course OCR, has been racing since 2014. In 2018, he was the North American OCR Championship, first place in his age group champion in the 15K and the 3K, which is awesome. In 2018 season, he also had 10 OCR races with 10 podiums, 7 first, 1 second, and 2 thirds. Again, very impressive. Last year, he got first place at CTG OKC and Little Rock, as well as a first place Florida Savage Race Blitz, and second place Spartan Sprint in Boca 2019.
Yeah.
Yep. So other than that, he's been helping grow the OCR community with Jay Flores in Florida. So Ashton, again, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, so let's jump back a little bit and tell us a little bit about you, because honestly, I did not know you at all until Jay's like, hey, you got to get this guy. This guy's got to be on our team. He's so good, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right, well, let's see him come out to a race and do a Conquer the Gauntlet. And you showed up, and not surprisingly, you won the 2 you showed up to last year, or 2 of the ones you showed up to last year. So tell us a little bit about your backgrounds. You play sports in high school and kind of what brought you into OCR.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, my background. I was always big into sports since I was little. My favorite 2 were soccer and basketball. In high school, I kind of played club sports. The high school I went to was a relatively bigger high school in Oklahoma. It's 6A, so it's like one of the biggest ones they have. I was playing on their football team in high school, and I had left so I was never like a runner or anything growing up. It was always sports related. That's where I got my running from. I went on vacation for a summer. We had a switch in new head coaches for football. So I came back and they didn't know me, and they kind of had already given my spot to another guy. And that's kind of how I got into track my senior year. So I was kind of like, you know what, I'll go play another sport. And I was able to run track. I was a mid-distance guy. I hated cross country. I hated the longer events. So I ran the 800 and down. Those were my events. And then after that, I kind of stopped. I went to college for a couple of years, didn't do too much. I ended up transferring to a college in Oklahoma City University, which is a NAIA school. And there I was able to get on their track and cross country team. And the only way I was able to do both is the scholarship that was given to me was stipulated that I had to do track and I had to do cross country. So that's when I kind of got my running background. I ran for 2 years there, and then I kind of got a little phased out of running, and I was looking for something different. And that's when I found my first CTG in Tulsa, actually, that I ran. And I was
Nice.
like, all right, this is something that I like and that I can see myself doing.
So jumping back a little, when you transition from super short distance, like 800 meter,
Mm-hmm.
what I think super short distance, not necessarily
Yeah.
a track person, right? I've heard 800 meters like one of the worst events, period, because it's right at that point where like you have to go all out the whole time. But so there's you basically just redline the entire time versus
Correct.
anything beyond that, you actually pace it a little bit, so you're not redlining. So how did you make the jump from like that to cross country? Because I know, I've got some friends that I've met through OCR who are former track guys, and some of them were having some trouble like transitioning into quote unquote longer distances like 5K.
Okay, yeah. So I made the transition grudgingly. it was just getting out there, and I started slower. So I started, with like a mile. I would go out and do an easy mile, and I just slowly worked my way up to. I knew in college that our races were 8K races for the school. So I kind of worked my way up to where I could do about 6 miles straight. That's kind of where I got my base, because I had the summer off before like the track season started, and that's when I had to actually try out for the team. So that's how I kind of had 3 months to slowly, gradually just get my mileage up.
What was your mileage when you were training specifically for the 800 versus training for something like the 8K cross country races?
Oh, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's so little. It's not even really comparable. Like, my longest run would be once a week, and I would maybe do like 2 miles.
Oh, wow.
So, like, yeah, I was a 800 and a 400 guy. So my mileage was really low. It consisted of mainly sprints, and like I didn't even really like to do the mile repeats that we would do, and like some of the longest ones we would do, because you'd have to train for that mid distance. You needed like to at least have that endurance, because you're redlining for half a mile. So like I would usually stop, and when I hit like three, like the third mile, I was like done. Like,
that's funny. I'm curious, Ashton, as to like any advice you'd have for someone who, let's say, maybe they're newer to OCR and they maybe did CrossFit or some other sport where they might have some obstacle strength, but they really haven't gotten the running part down. Like, what do you encourage them to like do as you're building up that mileage? Because I remember when I started track, I just would sprint 2 miles. I mean, I didn't sprint, but like that was how I started. I was just like run 2 miles as fast as I can. And the next day I would try to beat that time, which is definitely not a good way to get into
right.
it. But like for someone who might just be getting started out in the sport, or is just trying to increase their mileage in general because they enjoy obstacles, but they want to get more competitive now, and they know that the running is such a big portion of OCR. What are your thoughts for them?
So to increase their mileage, I would say just, gradually increase it. Definitely don't go out there, trying to run like 6 miles, like back-to-back days. I would, depending on if they're a CrossFitter or they're someone that's got a little bit of fitness background, they could probably, easily go out and do, a couple miles, 2 to 3 miles. And I would say you kind of just, depending on what you're comfortable with, just start out a little slower on your mileage for the week. Maybe, 10 is all you can get in, and just make sure you take your rest days in between. If you're doing like a longer run, which to Evan, like their long run would be, like a warm up, but to them starting would be like half of his warm up maybe, but like their 3 mile, run that they do is going to take a lot more out of their body than they may think. So just make sure to get that rest in between and kind of gradually go up on your mileage, and definitely get in at least a speed day too, because with shorter distances, to get your heart rate a little higher and get used to a little faster pace of, the mid distance OCRs now. That's kind of what I would suggest for them to start out with.
I like that, because I think a lot of times we look at other athletes in the sport and you're like, oh, I should be doing what that person is doing. But like, I think it's key to start building that base from where you're at and going up. I think of someone like Ashley Samples on our team, who she's putting in 100 miles a month. And, that's a goal for her. And sometimes I'm like, man, I'm not even close to that. But it's just a different style of training, right? And so if I go out and try to do that right, could potentially injure myself. If I try to do it, someone who's coming in right away and is trying to do that kind of mileage, it's not necessarily the right thing that they need in that moment. So I think each person should kind of take a look at where they're at and where they want to be, and build that over time.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, everyone's at a different point in their journey. And I think the other part is everyone has different goals, like my stuff's all endurance focused. So, I mean, I'll do I used to do 2 speed workouts a week, like 1 lactic threshold, 1 VO2 max. And the number of races I do that are just endurance, it was just tiring me out. And I was like, all right, so I typically I'll do like 1 speed workout a week, maybe, sometimes none. Just because, I mean, if you look at my race calendar, out of it's like 90% endurance thing. So like, I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
It'll be a good workout, but a lot of times then I have trouble running the next day or running well the next day.
So Ashton, I'm curious too as to what, like, not necessarily looking at what the OCR landscape looks like right now, but if you could kind of build out your ideal race. We've raced and trained at different distances and stuff, everything from Savage Blitzes to 15Ks at World Championship. What's that ideal spot for you, and where would you like to see the sport go?
For me, definitely, for me, I like the shorter stuff. You know what I would like to see is, like, I would love to see like an 800-meter obstacle course race. Like, that would be amazing.
That would be cool.
Just for like a speed course, but for me right now, where my sweet spot is, it's between the 3 to 5 mile range.
Okay.
So like that's my sweet spot. I can remember one Savage I ran, and I think James and Ken were there, and the last mile, just like that's where I died, because like that was it. Like that was all I had. So for me, the World's Championship, World OCRs that have the 3K, like I like that idea. The 5K races, and then like Conquer the Gauntlet is the 4 mile. Like that's like pretty much my sweet spot. Like that's what I like. And as far as obstacles go, I definitely like harder obstacles that actually make you work, that, even elites can go into, not even sure, with the question, like, if I'm not focused, like that can take me out, and I'll have to retry it and take a lot out of me. So I like the races with the harder obstacles for sure, like Pegatron, Stairway to Heaven. Savage has some good ones. Some of the rigs are really nice.
Yeah, I think that's missing in the sport now. I think ever since Battle Frog kind of went under, and for us, we really focus on CTG, but I think CTG is probably still the only one that people show up to, and the top elites are still worried about how challenging it's going to be. I feel like Savage has got some really good ones, but I don't feel like I would have gone to a Savage and feared for my band.
Yeah. No, the fear is not there at Savage. So they have good obstacles, but they're definitely not. I don't think they're hard enough to actually scare you.
So I feel like that feeling is kind of gone. And I don't know, this might be a good question for you, Evan. Course maps. I remember, and maybe it's because I went to a lot of local Florida races, and Ashton, you might be able to talk about this too, because you've done a lot of local Florida ones. But I remember showing up and not knowing what obstacles were going to be there. What do you guys think about like the course maps versus just like showing up and turning a corner and there's a rig? Or it's CTG kind of throws in the mystery obstacles as well, but you can always kind of guess what's going to be there based on, like, if you don't see Pegatron on the map, then obviously Pegatron's a mystery obstacle. But right. What are you guys' thoughts on that, kind of knowing what to expect versus just like the surprise of what obstacles could be?
I'm fairly neutral about it. I don't really have a preference either way. I know sometimes people online are like, well, why don't they have the course map up yet? And it's like, guys, sometimes the course is still being built while you're complaining about the lack of course map. So that might be a reason you don't have a course map, because the obstacles aren't in creation yet. And I think some people are like, oh, well, that's a professional sport. Well, they wouldn't have a mystery obstacle. They wouldn't have a mystery map or stuff like that. Yeah, I see that point, but then at the same time, like, our sport is, and I've used this comparison on the podcast before, right? Like, our sport's a little more like strongman than it is like powerlifting, right? Like powerlifting, everything's very standardized. It's the same bar, same weight, same exact thing over and over again. Strongman, it's like, here is just like, it's just, nothing's standardized. The Atlas stones aren't standardized. They're different weights. They're different. You're putting them over different heights. There's different obstacles. There's different events. So, and I kind of like that large variability, because I think it keeps the sport interesting and keeps the top of the, so you don't show up to a race and you're like, well, here's who's gonna win, 1, 2, 3, and because everyone's done all these obstacles, everyone knows exactly what's coming, and blah 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 blah. So yeah, like I said, fairly neutral on it. I think it's just another obstacle, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with Evan here. I'm pretty neutral on it. To me, it really, it doesn't affect me personally because usually I won't even look at the course map.
I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that too.
I mean, honestly, I kind of like just going into race, and like I like the surprise of like running into the next obstacle and then having to like just like think and just get it, like in that split second, just like, oh, this is what's like, you just show up and you're like, all right, you just got to do it and got to attack it. And so I kind of personally like that, like not even knowing. Probably 90% of the time, any of the races that I run, I won't look at the course map. I am learning now that I missed the CTG in Tulsa because I was an hour late to look at the race times.
Oh.
That is true.
At least know the correct time of the elite waves. But
CTG's elite wave sometimes changes time based on location and number of participants. So
you learn something new.
Yeah, that was a good. I remember being at the start line, being like, "Where the f is Ashton?" Yeah, I saw you later on Continuum, and I was like, "What? Where were you?" You're like, "Oh, I missed the start time." I was like, "Mother, come on."
Yeah. So, but yeah, to me,
I think you would have.
I mean,
that would have been a good race too, because that had a hard rig in it. So.
No, it was a muddy, wet course too, so it would have been a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I see where some people they like to plan out, like what the race strategy or use it to plan the race strategy. But yeah, as far as my take on them, it's kind of neutral. It's like it doesn't matter to me. So,
Jay,
you have strong preference or opinion?
So it's funny because I'm super analytical about the course maps now, but I do miss like the idea of turning the corner and just not knowing what to expect. I feel like races kind of need to have a way to show which key obstacles are coming, so people know in general what to expect. And I think even for the open wave, so they know like what kind of race it is. So maybe just listing which obstacles are going to be there, but not the order or something. I don't just different ways to get creative with how it can be, because it can go in either way. Because I remember I used to be like Ashton too, and I wouldn't want to look at it. And then I made like a bad strategy call, I guess I'd say, at a race. And I think if I would have known what was coming next, I would have attacked it a little differently and potentially placed differently. But at the same time, sometimes you just got to go for it. You just got to send it, right? So
yeah,
I agree with you guys. I think there's a good mix, but it can make it more interesting and feel more of like, I like using OCR as an analogy for life too. And you never know what's going to be the next thing thrown at you. So it's kind of cool for the sport aspect of that too.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump back to Ashton. You did your first Conquer the Gauntlet was that back in 2014?
Yeah, I think it was 2014.
Did you just show up to the open wave, or did you end up running elite back then?
No, I think I ran elite. I registered and ran elite. I had no idea what I was getting into. I thought it was going to be like a mud run, like like one of those 5K, mud runs for fun type of deal. I didn't do any really research about it. I just kind of found it and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And I saw a couple other obstacles on their website and I was like, oh, that looks fun. I had no idea what I was really getting myself into with how tough their obstacles were.
So how'd that first one go for you?
Not good. So I couldn't do. Well, it was going good until I ran into Pegatron.
I feel like that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. So it's just such a tough obstacle, and if you've never, at that point, I had never done any even ninja type training at all. So
this was the Tulsa venue, you said?
This was the Tulsa venue, yep.
Okay, so that must have been 2015 then. That was when
15.
That was when they first debuted Pegatron.
Okay.
And, there was no warning, and like the only person to get across, I think it was like Bryce for a long time. I think a couple other people got across eventually, but it was. I remember it because I was overseas in Lebanon at the time, and I remember them showing it and being like, "Whoa, that would have destroyed me." So I built a pegboard after seeing. I remember after those pictures.
Awesome.
Pictures went up. Yeah.
So. Yeah, so that was my first race, and that was. I mean, it was tough. It was one of the toughest things I had done. And that's when I was just like, oh man, this is super fun. And that's what kind of got me excited about it. And I didn't really start training for it. I was just excited. And I kind of had a lot going on that year. I ended up moving to Florida and all this stuff. And then once I got situated in Florida, closer to 2016-ish, then I started finding, like ninja gyms, and I started running more and started kind of training for it more specifically.
Nice.
I think it's awesome that you said, like, even though Pegatron beat you that time, that you had fun and continued on. So I feel like there's a good amount of people that stay away from Conquer the Gauntlet because of that. So what would you say to someone who looks at the website and sees, oh wow, like this obstacle looks too hard, or that one I know I can't do? Like, what would you do to encourage them to still try out a CTG?
It's super fun. I mean, there's something about something that challenges you, I think, that makes it even more exciting and makes you want to, continue to do it. There's so many people I meet at CTGs that show up and they're like, oh, yeah, like they're so excited to get another shot at those hard obstacles, because it's not something that you can just go out there and just like, walk through and take it easy and do. It's something that's, actually challenging and yet fun and exciting at the same time. And there's such a great community around the CTG family and everyone. So there's always people, they're offering tips and like, like, come on, you got this, and encouragement. So that's what I would tell them is give it a shot, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna end up loving it.
Yeah, I love that. Like, you also mentioned the family feel and the community of CTG, because it's one of the few races where you can get big, awesome obstacles, like challenging obstacles, but still have that same family community feel.
Yeah,
and in
and
general, like the OCR community is pretty good about that, but I think CTG almost has like that next level of community.
and not only that, but for beginners, the price point I think is unmatchable for the courses and the
100%.
obstacles that you get. I mean, there's not a race out there that can top CTG.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if you sign up early or get
Exactly.
a discount, right? Like, I mean, it's the other ones don't even compare. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Honestly, the hardest part is getting to the venues because they're all Midwest based. So either fly out or take a long drive to get there. So, but you can find you keep an eye on the locations, and you can find cheap flights occasionally. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And Dallas is one where most people can get to for pretty cheap if you're flying.
Although Dallas is not going on this year.
Yeah, unfortunately. Freaking coronavirus, man.
Yeah. So Dallas is gone. The first one should be, as of now, OKC. Hopefully that one's still a go. We will see. We will see as the weeks tick by and
Fingers crossed.
things continue to develop. All right. Now you mentioned, or I mentioned rather, in your bio, 2018, you had 10 races, 10 podiums. Give us some tips on how you were able to perform so consistently in so many races in a relatively short period of time, right? Were you taking A races and B races, or were you that's just where the fitness level you brought at? You cluster all your races in once, you spread them out throughout the year? Kind of give us a little more details on that.
All right. So I actually don't remember like how they were clustered in 2018 at all. I kind of have short term, and my long term memory is not that great. A couple years back, but for me, I think that year I had a good year with I had a good training schedule down, and I was able to stick to it, and I was able to keep my recovery days to where I needed, or add more if I felt like I was getting a little worn down from a couple back-to-back races.
Nice. And what brands were those in?
I think there were some CTGs, some Savages, and a couple other in there.
Nice.
I think that was the year was Worlds too. So
So I feel like I may remember Ashton's season a little better than Ashton does. Mainly because I was really, we trained together, but also I knew he'd be a great addition to the CTG Pro team because of his success, but also just because of the type of person he is. And I know you freaking killed that Savage season, several podiums. I think the only people you lost to are probably Yuri, Ken, and James. I don't think you raced Ryan Woods, did you?
No.
Either way, the only people that you lost to are pretty much Savage legends. I remember that blitz that we ran together, and I just kept thinking, man, if I can get him on the obstacles, that's usually my thought process. I'll get everyone on the obstacles. And Ashton is just as good at the obstacles as he is a runner. So there was no catching him there, but that was a cool double podium for us at the Savage Blitz. And so I think there's going to be, once everything gets back to normal, a really good season for you again this year too, man. So I'm excited for that.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
I know you said you guys train together. Talk a little bit about that and where your training location is.
All right. So Jay travels so much that we try to train together as much as we can when he's in Miami. But right now we're doing, usually Mondays are ninja focus training, and we're going to this it's called the Ninja Lounge down here in Miami. They have a really pretty good setup, American Ninja Warrior type, like trusses and obstacles. So we're doing training there on Mondays for ninja, and then we'll usually get together before we train ninja and go for a run, or we'll hit up some trails at some of the trails we have around here for trail runs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been a little rough lately because Ashton had an ankle injury, and I've had a little bit of knee problems. But usually, and we're still sticking to the Mondays and sometimes Wednesdays is too with ninja training. But try to get like 2 good obstacle focused days a week, easy runs in, and we haven't been to the track in a bit, but we usually had a track day every week prior to me leaving for the show. So we got to get back to that when we're both feeling 100%. Just getting a good speed day, some trails with maybe a little more distance, and then definitely the traditional easy runs and some obstacle days. I think it's been a good mix for both of us to be able to compete at an elite level, both on the running side and on the harder obstacle side.
Yeah, that works out well with the two of you being so close to each other, having a good training person right there. That's awesome.
I think it really helps us push each other and keep each other accountable too. So if you've got anyone in the area that you can connect with that is excited about it, even if they're not necessarily, even if they're at a different training level, just for the accountability portion of it. And, some days I might be feeling down, and then Ashton just texts me like, hey, you want to go run today, or you want to go to the gym? And the day that I probably would have skipped something,
Yeah.
I now have someone that's helping me drag along, right? And so that definitely helps a lot.
So Ashton, you mentioned, or Jay mentioned, that you had an injury. I think it was towards the end of last year. Talk a little bit about that and
All
how
right.
you've been dealing with it.
I had tenosynovitis in 2 of my tendons in my right ankle. So that hit me pretty hard. I wanted to finish out my season, so I just wasn't being smart about it. I should have just took off and rested, did my recovery. I went through a phase where I was kind of just like, oh, it's not too bad. And I would run, I'd get in my workouts, and then it would be super swollen and inflamed, and I would have to take a couple days off, and then I would get back to running for a day, take a day off. I was in this really bad cycle of trying to just make it through the end of my season. So I finally got to the point where I had to go to the doctor because it just hurt to stand on and walk on. I went, and that's when they did MRI, found out I had tenosynovitis in 2 tendons, and they're both on, one's the posterior tibialis, so it's on the inside of my right ankle, and the other one was, I think, the flexor digitorum longus. So both of them were on the runs along the inside of your ankle there. And I was off it for 5 weeks, and I thought, I would be good to go. And I ran a Spartan in Mulberry, which was the worst race I could have picked to come back off, like not running at all for 5 weeks. The terrain was horrible. a handful of people ended up with sprained ankles and getting injured. So I ran that, got fourth, and then after that, I knew immediately, like I knew like I made it worse. So then I started rehabbing it, and just got back to where me and Jay are able to, jog, go for a slow jog. So um, I'm up to 2 miles now, being able to, pain free,
Yeah.
which is nice because I mean, this has been since, I mean, I heard it in November, and that's when I was going through that phase, and then since December, I've been having to stay off of it completely. I had to get put in a boot
Oh,
and
wow.
everything. So yeah.
Yeah. I feel like injuries, it's always easy to look back on yourself and critique in hindsight. But in the moment, I think what makes you a good athlete is also your ability to like ignore pain and ignore minor aches and pains and stuff like that. So it's something hard to judge when you're in the moment, but kind of looking back on your situation, obviously hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for someone else who may be experiencing a similar, lower limb pain?
Lower limb pain for sure. Yeah, first I would say is that your body more than anyone else does. So when it happened to me, I knew that I think I knew that I was hurt and I should have took the time off, but I didn't want to. So listen to your body. I really think if I would just took 2 weeks off and recovered and started therapy exercises, and I would have been good to go. But it's when you continually keep pushing your body and something's wrong. So you might have a small ache and you're like, okay, it's not too bad. So the next day you go out for a 2 mile and you're good. The next day you do the same thing and it's good. And that might be it. You might get better. But if you have that small pain and it's not getting better, it's getting worse, then you should definitely stop, take the time to, recover and rehab, and it'll pay off because instead of being out for longer or having serious injury.
Cool thing about our sport is that there's so much you need to work on, which sometimes is very challenging. But if you're having pain in a certain area, then maybe you take a few days off from running and really focus on your grip strength or strength obstacles and stuff that may not be impacting that zone that's bothering you. And that's one thing that's helped me a lot, is just understanding that even though I'm not running today, I can still be getting better in this sport. Took a while to try to understand that, but that's really what helped me get really good at obstacles. Is I had a really bad knee injury several years ago and I couldn't run at all for like a month and a half, I think. And so I just went bouldering and rock climbing a lot. And that's how I really got my grip strength up, and this helped long-term more than if I wouldn't have had that injury.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if everything is shot, I mean, you can still pretty much work on balance for all, your injury has to be really bad not to be able to work on balance or upper body, right? Like if whatever part of your body's hurting, you can find something. So definitely good advice there, Jay.
Even flexibility. That's one thing I've realized. People that are really good downhill runners and just certain obstacles, flexibility really helps too. And I'm assuming with running form too. I'm not an expert on running form, but in general, I think being more flexible is going to help you too. So even if you're just stretching or doing some yoga, I think the key is just keep active. Like just give yourself that zone, that part that's hurting, give it the rest it needs, but just find other ways to keep active. And it'll also help with like that mental struggle of like, oh, I've got a race coming up and I want to be like at the top level. You can still make small progress without re-aggravating the injury.
If you want some good information from recovery modalities and stuff like that, we had Dr. Kirk Iodice on the podcast a couple episodes ago talking about just recovery in general. He's a chiropractor that does some IASTM and adjustments and E-stim and dry needling and myofascial release therapy, all these cool scientific sounding stuff that help you recover faster and perform better. And we're bringing him back on the podcast. I'm not sure if this will be released before or after, but we did a Q&A with him where we talked about some specific injuries. So very good resource. And on the last time we had him on the podcast, he was like, yeah, if you ever have any questions, shoot me a message and I'll either answer it for you or help you get to the right place to answer it, because he's based out of Kansas City. Ashton, what do you got planned for 2020 season? Let's assume that all races are back on starting in June.
Starting in June, I will be at CTG OKC. That'll be my first one. Let's test out the ankle. I'm going to do CTG Tulsa as well later on. And then I'll probably try to fit in a Savage and then Worlds. Going to be heading up to Worlds.
Nice. You run an age group for Worlds or?
No, so I'll be running Pro. What happened in 2018 was actually towards the end of my season, I started having knee issues. And my training wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so I kind of went into that 2018 Worlds conservative and not really training that much. And that's why I did age group that year.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, because this year I had already registered for Pro. So I'll be there doing the 3K and then probably the team event.
Nice. Jay, what do you got?
So CTG and Savage, a bunch of them. I don't really know which ones yet. OKC is challenging because it's right around my fiance's birthday, so that one's usually that weekend is usually a no-go.
It's a great birthday present.
She would not.
Significant other loves that. Guess where I took my wife for her birthday for several years in a row? Las Vegas. World's Toughest Mudder.
For World's Toughest Mudder.
Every weekend. She's like, why? Why is it always on my birthday? I was like, I don't know.
You're the worst.
And the first year, it was her birthday, and she was 6 months or 5 months pregnant. So it was a double whammy. Man. It was a double whammy.
Wow. So yeah, so it depends though, because we might go somewhere the weekend after her birthday, because her birthday's in the middle of the week this year. So I might make it to OKC. I think Little Rock is my birthday weekend. But overall, it's still kind of in flux for the season. I had like 4 Savage races that I was going to go to that all got canceled in the beginning of the season, and a couple Ninja competitions. But really hoping this passes through, get to a bunch of Savages and CTGs. That's what I can tell you, is those 2 race series are going to be my focus. Maybe a local Florida race just to support local races, but the focus is going to be CTG, Savage, and then World Championships for sure. I'll be there running Pro, 3K team, and hopefully the short course if they do that again. I don't know if it was like 100 or 400 meters. I couldn't go to Worlds last year since I was on the show. And I want to get out to something in Europe. I've been following my buddy Leon from Denmark. He's done really well at World Championships, and he's been doing some really cool short races with really good upper body obstacles out there in like Poland and Denmark and stuff. So I'm going to see if I can get out to one of those.
Nice. I was actually thinking of going over for Meltdown, the 24-hour race in London at where the World Championships, OCR World Championships was held this year. But this was before the virus outbreak, and the flights there were so expensive. Because I'm also taking a family trip to another part of Europe afterwards, and it was cheaper for me to fly to London, race for the weekend, fly back to Kansas City, get on a plane, fly to Greece, spend the time there, and then fly back. Then it was. I figured it's just it's like I'm paying the cost of the international, the jumping over the Atlantic. So it should be cheaper once you get over there. And it was, I don't know, the flight route I had was not. It was so I crossed that one off my list.
Okay. Well, flights are cheap now, not for a good reason, but you can find good deals for like later in the year. So take a look at it again, potentially. Obviously, don't book anything for April, May, or June even. But if you're looking at something in September or August, you might be able to find a good deal.
Yeah, it's late June. Yeah, I don't. It's just too much. I mean, I would have to fly. It would just be ridiculous.
Okay.
It's just too much. It gets super complicated, especially with endurance, the 24-hour ones, because I bring a bag that's just for endurance, right? Like,
Yeah.
so we did the Australia race enduro. I had a bag that was just race kit, and then another duffel bag that was more race kit, including like a tent, and then I had a backpack for 2 weeks of clothing. I just stuffed all my like normal clothing in there, and I was like, yeah, I need all the race stuff as priority. So
Exactly.
all right, we're gonna wrap things up. Say one thing people would be surprised to know about you. We're gonna start off with Ashton.
One thing that people would be surprised to know about me is that I think they'd be surprised to know that like I'm super into like anything extreme, like any type of extreme sport. Like there's not a sport I think that I haven't played or tried to play.
Define extreme. Give me a couple of.
So extreme to me would be snowboarding like down the backside of a mountain where you had to like climb, you like take a ski lift to get there, and then you have to like climb further, and then you strap in and you're going down the backside of these mountains where like there's no one's even been there before.
Oh, cool. All right, that's a good one. And what's your day job? I feel like some people probably don't know that either.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a nurse. So right now, I'm a nurse. That's my day job. I work per diem, so it's kind of nice because I got to make my own schedule. And right now I'm in school too, so getting my doctorates as a nurse practitioner. So I have about a year and a half left.
Nice. So they're running you into the ground now with all this coronavirus stuff that's going on?
Yeah, well, they're trying. So I'm per diem. So I send my hours and when I'm available. So yeah, I mean they're trying. There's a lot of us out there that I've actually taken off for this week, but yeah, next week we're gonna be back at it hard.
All right. Well, I'm sure the nation appreciates the work you're doing. So thank you on behalf of everyone.
Sure.
Sure, thanks.
Let's jump over to Jay. Something people would be surprised to know about you.
Yeah. So, especially those that don't speak Spanish and didn't get to watch the show. During the show, you're away. There's no communication. I didn't get to talk to my girlfriend in the first month and a half that I was there. We only had a 5 minutes video call. That's the only interaction I had with her for a month and a half. But our team won this amazing challenge where we were able to bring in a family member. They didn't tell us who was going to come, but we had given them a list at the beginning of the season of like 5 people that we would, want to be able to communicate with if we want a video call, or that we'd want to be able to interact with in some way. And so my girlfriend came, and I ended up proposing on the show, so on national television. I was super nervous, not because I didn't think she would say yes or anything. We've been together for a really long time. Just, I guess, the cameras and everything in the moment. And I put the ring on her finger before she technically said yes. So it was pretty funny.
Didn't give her a choice.
And I looked back, she told me, and I was like, what? And I looked back, and I was like, as I'm putting it on, she said, she was saying it yes after I'd already started. But it was a cool moment. We got really cool pictures and video, obviously. It was awesome. Kind of crazy.
That is a good story. However, Jay, you told that story last time you were on the podcast when we
No, did I for real?
So that does not count. I will tell a story, and then you can come back with something else, because
all right,
giving you're the only person who's been that's a negative mark on your something that people don't know. All right, so I'll go with. So you mentioned you were on a Spanish-speaking TV show. I can't remember if I used this one. I really should keep a list. But for my job, they taught me Persian-Farsi, which is what they speak in Iran. So I can speak Persian-Farsi at a pretty mediocre to poor level. I mean, I can get by. I can read the script, like Arabic script. I can write an Arabic script. Obviously, it's a different language. Persian's different than.
Can you tell us a little something?
Esman Evanas, Manakle, New York Astam, Mandar, Shahar, Kansas City, Zendegi Mikunam. So my name's Evan. I'm from, I don't know what I said. I'm from New York, and I live in Kansas City. So Yeah, I can order
I
restaurant
don't know what
food.
you said either, but I believe.
I heard New York and Kansas City.
Yeah. So
That's
and
awesome.
then
I didn't notice you say Evan though. It kind of flowed with what you were saying before that.
yeah. And then when I used to deploy, so my first 2 deployments were 12-month and a 14, and this is before Skype really, and we didn't have, smartphones, and we had computers, but a lot of times you had to go to like the call center to call home. So I actually used to only call my wife or back to my family like once every probably 2 to 3 weeks, which people are like, oh, that's awful. It's like, well, I don't know. It was one of those things where I used to tell them just no news is good news. And so if you don't hear from me, everything's going good. And I found that if I called more often, one, I would miss home more. And
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like when I miss home too much, it prevents me from doing my job as well. Because I think to be a good soldier, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything. And if I'm thinking about my family while I'm doing missions, that's not where I want my headspace at. And
Right.
maybe some other people would disagree or have their own way of coping with that, but that's my way. And yeah, so I didn't call very often, so I was not very good. And then the other problem is if you call all the time and then you miss a night, then all of a sudden your family goes into panic because like, why didn't you call last night? So
Yeah.
I did not call very often. So I don't really like talking on the phone too much because when you're deployed, you don't really have much to talk about because it's like, well, then I went on a bunch of missions and can't really talk about them. Not that they're like super secret, but it's just it's kind of inappropriate to talk about them. And some of the stuff you shouldn't share because it reveals capabilities and stuff like that. So didn't have much to talk about besides watching bootleg movies for several years, which I've watched a lot of. So, all right, I ran my mouth for a while, so that should give Jay some time to come up with a new one.
Yeah. Well, first, appreciate that sacrifice you made for all of us and that you continue to make. So this one just recently accomplished, I guess. So as of a couple weeks ago when I went to Brazil for a robotics event, I've now exercised, like gone for a run or something on every continent except for Antarctica.
Oh, nice.
And I've raced in obviously North America, Europe, and Africa. So I've still got a race in Asia and South America, but
nice. We need to get you to
there.
Technically, the Middle East is Asia, Southwest Asia, so we need to get you to a Hannibal race. And then
For sure.
Technically, that checks that off the list. So
yeah, that counts. So actually, I went to Thailand and there was a Spartan race there, but obviously I didn't know beforehand. But yeah, I'd be down to head out to Hannibal race.
Yeah. I was planning on going to Malaysia. Had a 24-hour race once called Viper 24, but they only held it 1 year. It was in 2015. Jung Young Pak went over there and not surprisingly won. The race got interrupted midway through the race due to like a typhoon or something insane.
Wow.
So they had to do there was like a several-hour lockdown in the middle of their race, but not surprisingly, he destroyed it.
Do we have a second for a quick story on that?
Yeah.
Somewhere. So I was at Savage in Central Texas. I think it was last year because it's before I left for the show. And there was weather coming in, and I had gone out for a warm up, and I was like about half mile out, and this huge like thunder, lightning bolt, whatever comes in, and so I'm like, oh shoot, I should probably head back. And I head back, and the entire festival area is empty. And I'm like, what's going on? Where did everybody go? And so I guess they had sent everyone out to cars, but I didn't hear that because I was too far out on my warm up. And it's just like the world had ended, and like everyone got struck by lightning and disintegrated. And I was the only survivor until I saw someone out by the vehicles. And I went out, but it was pretty crazy.
That's pretty funny. All right, let's give final shout outs to friends, family, sponsors. Ashton first.
Shout out to all our sponsors that are sponsoring us at CTG, Rock Tape, Atomic, Rapid Reboot, all those guys. To my family for supporting me, my daughter, my dad helps me a lot. My teammates, those are my big ones.
Right on. Jay, what do you got?
Shout out to not just because they were the featured sponsor for today, but Rapid Reboot's been really helping me a lot. I love it. one of the coolest sponsor gifts I think we've gotten. Also shout out to all the athletes out in Puerto Rico. I know a lot of you guys have through me have seen what happened with the hurricane, but there's also been a lot of earthquakes recently, and coronavirus. The island is completely on lockdown. So just the resilience of a lot of those athletes is really inspiring. So hopefully we'll see a lot of them at World Championship despite the challenges. So shout out to all of them, and of course to my family that supports me on this journey as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Make sure you're checking Mud Run Guide. I got a bunch of new articles coming out there. I also have some stuff that should be coming out later this year on the Adventure OCR World Championships website, some of the articles I wrote for them. And then, as always, our online store, teamstrengthspeed.com, has books and bleg mitts, both light and extreme, and hard copies of all our books, and now links to digital copies, and then also a link to the Audible of Ultra OCR Man, my biography book. So if you're going to pick up any of the digital copies, please go to my website first and click through my website, because I get like a small kickback, because it is, you do not get a lot of kickback even when you sell books on a lot of the websites, because there's a high printing cost. And then even for digital, Amazon likes to take a nice chunk of that change. So feel free to click through my website. I would appreciate it. And if you're not big on reading, or you're not gonna, or you've already bought one and you want to do something to help out the podcast, you can head over to Amazon.com and preferably leave a 5-star review on one of my books. That would be much appreciated. So, all right, I think that's it. Good hanging out with you guys, and stay safe and wash your hands, and hopefully we will see each other back in the normal continuation of OCR season later in 2020.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yep. Get some good training.
Talk to you soon, guys.
Have a good one.